Good afternoon, folks, and welcome back to the Unqork Twitch channel. Today, this July 7th. So today, we're going to talk about testing. Now, some of you might be asking yourself, I thought you already talked about testing when you covered some of the UDLC capabilities and some of the automated unit tests that come with it. But that's only one type of testing, right? And that's where your developers are focused on testing. And a lot of you out there are developers. But I know in my time as a developer, as many unit tests as I would write and as much work that I would do to try to make sure that the code I'm writing or the no code I'm configuring these days is working, I wasn't always right, and it didn't always catch everything. And that's why my best friends in the world as a developer were always my quality analysts. So today, to talk about the other side of testing where folks like quality analysts focus on, we have Karen Laiacona to join us. Karen, why don't you say hi to everybody?
Hey, everybody. Hey, Nick and Uncoder. Really happy to be here. My name is Karen Laiacona. As you mentioned, I am the Senior QA Director at Unqork Digital, which is our premier professional services delivery arm. I've been, working in quality content delivery for over 10 years now. We deliver over 50 applications in codeless architecture every year with my current team. And we've learned a lot during that time. So today, I'd love to talk to you about, our codeless testing strategy that we've come up with and the great tool set that we have found to accelerate that strategy.
Cool. And I just gotta, Karen, I gotta bring it up. I'll never forget when I met you. And I feel like you're not gonna forget when you met me either. Karen's first day on the job, if I'm not mistaken, was immediately going to a client's office. Is that right?
That's immediately right. From Kentucky to New York City.
First time in New York City when we, used to all be headquartered there. I was working out of a client's office day in and day out. Karen came over on her first day on the job to talk about testing within Unqork. And she nailed it. I mean, absolutely. You would have thought that she was been running QA at this organization since it was founded by Gary. The way she was able to talk to the client about what we can do and things like that. And to me, aside from showing me how awesome Karen was, it also showed me that, and hopefully shows other folks that just because you're doing things codelessly and just because you're using no code doesn't mean that all of the great things that you've learned and all those best practices and patterns and approaches that you do in all other forms of software development, they don't go out the window with codeless, right? If anything, they get better. So for Karen to come in and just have an answer to everything is leveraging and your experience in the past, right?
Absolutely. My experience is mostly in other startup companies. And then I had a lot of experience in a legacy insurance system. So experienced those frustrations firsthand of, legacy operating systems and how can we modernize those? How can we progress? How can we mesh the way that we're building software with the way that we need to test that software?
Right, exactly. And then, and now you've been with us, I think you said over 3 years now. Yeah, I think that was like January, February of 2019, maybe.
Yeah.
That sounds right. And yeah, now you've spent 3 years making things even better and better and better, not just for us, but probably for yourself, being able to do all these things through Codeless. And that's what I guess we're going to, really focus on today in terms of how Codeless can help you have even a better, QA and testing process than you may get elsewhere. So, before I turn it over to Karen to wow you with everything that she has prepared, just a reminder to folks that this all really goes back to and is enabled by codeless architecture, right? And the fact that we have this declarative representation of your data that's structured and understood and documented and open, which then facilitates a world of possibility around it, right? There's the core benefit that you're going to end up with an application that doesn't have any implementation legacy, that your business logic stays your business logic, but then you can start to build a lot of great things around it, whether it's the IDE of Designer or the Express runtime, whether it's, testing tools, whether you're building a testing tool, leveraging our testing tools, or integrating, as you're going to show us, integrating with other testing tools. It's all possible because of that codeless definition in the middle and everything being represented within it. So I won't say much more than that. I hope that tees up for you to give us a little taste of some of the amazing stuff you can do when you're testing codeless.
Thank you, Nick. It certainly does. All right, well, I'll get right into it. So people are really asking me all the time, how do I test codeless architecture? How do I test applications built in Unqork? What is different about testing these applications in this software versus others? And there are a lot of similarities, but there are some differences. There is no code. However, it's very transparent and it's available for you to test. You simply need to approach it with a model-based testing coverage. With Unqork Agile Framework, we're able to combine Agile methodology with Unqork templates to deliver Unqork applications with efficiency, with success, and at the quality that everybody expects. We can't just have something that's ready for the day of go live, but it also needs to be future proofed for exactly what that client or you want to put that application through. Your team, everyone should be engaged in automation. By enabling everyone to create and maintain tests, we've seen the number of test cases increase, the number of test runs increase, and that means overall the quality of your product is going to be better before you go live with it. It elevates the QA team function by automating these repetitive tasks like coupling the Unqork API unit test module. And right now we're talking about, functional UI automation tests. By removing humans from those repetitive tasks, we're elevating their function. They're actually able to suss out problems, break the application, find edge cases, and move your application in the right direction rather than simply checking boxes. We've investigated dozens of tools to help us see what enables us to test codeless architecture the best, what integrates into Unqork Agile Framework at this time. And we've found that partnering with Sauce Labs and using their tool set, we're able to achieve much more than we were with our manually intensive process.
When you said, just to go back to something you said on that side, so you said enabling everyone to create and maintain tests. When you say everyone, like who is everyone when you refer to them that way?
Yeah, well, in our projects, they're called engagement managers and solution architects, configurators, but whoever they may be, they're the people who are familiar with your business requirements, people building your application, and your testing team. Folks have different roles and responsibilities on the project, but their capabilities shouldn't prevent them from being involved in something that they absolutely need to be involved in. For a project manager to have the transparency and see exactly what the test cases are covering, what the results are, and possibly able to edit that script themselves, it makes the application that much better.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Yeah, I think you're highlighting one of the biggest benefits of codeless architecture and a lot of no code and low code tools in general even is bringing all sides closer and into the same table to contribute, not just in the development but also in the testing, because ultimately when it gets to your client, the quality of what you deliver is arguably the most important part of it.
Yes, especially if you're saying that it's tested, you better know what is tested. Yeah.
That's right. Otherwise it's a feature, not a bug, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
So our codeless testing strategy, what we've put together after these years of experience, after delivering tons of applications and software, we've decided QA is not just a step in the process, but it has to be part of every phase in the build. With codeless architecture and the agile framework that I just mentioned, it becomes easier. The right milestones and measurements are built into the system so that you're not able to have an application or even a single module that's outlying from these standards. When you're putting your test strategy together, you have to consider what types of testing are you going to cover based on the expectations. Are you going to cover unit testing, functional, and which non-functional types of testing might you have to consider? Performance, accessibility, compliance. At this time in the project, it's important to schedule and onboard everyone that's necessary to complete these tasks. Now, making that decision earlier on in the project, you also need to know what tools you're going to onboard. So it's important that you're making those decisions with everyone's capabilities in mind, or what the tool allows them to do and what the tool can integrate with. Peer review, we mentioned before, involving everybody in the process. It's important to involve everybody in the model-based test coverage, because we're not comparing lines of code to lines of code. We have data workflows, we have integrations going in multiple directions, and there needs to be a peer review so that the risks are covered. After these peer reviews, we can move forward, much like a security and architecture review, knowing that everything is safe and sound. Enforcing quality, picking the right metrics so that we're not relying on people to escalate if the project is not on track. We can have numbers tell us that. Is the health of your sprint affecting the health of your system, for example? A lot of people might only have one pass and fail rate, whereas we have multiple. We're looking at individual data workflows and how that data workflow is performing compared to the entire system. This will help you give direction to your team and also know where to spend more effort. Now that your team has automated all those repetitive tasks, these are the areas where they should be spending their time. Reusable components. We always want to work smarter, not harder. One of the greatest benefits of codeless architecture is working from already tested and standardized components. We can put together automation testing for those components as well and couple them as products that can be downloaded together, so that an individual is not only starting with a complex configuration, but they're starting with the complex testing suite that couples that. And it helps that individual build better software. And accelerating human engineering with powerful technology. It's up to the business, the leaders, the project managers to pick the right set of tools so that they're enabling their team to work together in these really compatible ways.
Cool. I'd love to go back to, you brought up accessibility, and it's top of mind for me too, because we just had a couple of our UX engineers on Tuesday to talk about design in Unqork, and one of them, Joe, mentioned that he was colorblind. Right? Interesting to be a colorblind designer, and that might make people think about things like, all right, well, if you have a red button and a green button next to each other and one is good and one is bad, like that's not always going to be accessible. But I know this is something that's been near and dear to your heart for a while, and I know it goes beyond just color blindness and the ability to discern things. Can you maybe tell folks who might not be as familiar with accessibility testing, like what accessibility is in its entirety, and maybe even just some of the common pitfalls that your team catches a lot that folks should be a little more mindful of during development?
Absolutely. Digital accessibility is concerned with some of the ailments that you mentioned, color blindness, other eyesight issues, and physical disabilities that could prevent somebody from moving throughout the interweb the way that we do. And they could, use a different mouse or trackpad. They could be restricted to just using a keyboard. And they often use their own third-party tools that we have to integrate with, called screen readers. So individuals that have, issues with digital accessibility are protected by, laws in the United States and other countries, such as the Americans with Disabilities Act and the WCAG guidelines and Section 508. So they are protected, and we have to ensure space for them. It's something that software developers have to consider when they're building software is, who is my end user and what are the expectations of this application? There are definitely, things that we might consider bells and whistles, like heat maps and some of those more fun components that are very visual, which unfortunately are not accessible to everybody. The law states that we must provide an alternative or an all-encompassing pathway. So with Unqork, you can choose the right components based on your, the expectations. And it's important that we do consider the end user's experience, especially those with disabilities.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Back to it.
So test automation with Autonomic. We have found that, give me a second. There we go. We have found that Autonomic is great to say. Sometimes we call it AIQ though. So I might call it AIQ from here on just because it's shorter. It's a Sauce Labs product focused on functional test automation. It works like this in the back end. However, the main features that we love are that it has multiple test creation and intake options. There's a play and record and play feature. There's working within the AIQ interface and typing in plain English, which you'll see in a couple of minutes. And there's uploading manual test cases from, perhaps your legacy system or another system. So it's easy to integrate into a new process or an existing process. And for individuals that have, preferences or different skill sets. We found that this reduced our time for automation script creation by 50%. We cut our time in half. This was incredible. It allowed us to put automation in place in our projects sooner, or allowed us to run tests more often, and move on to expand our test coverage much sooner in the delivery phase of the project. Script maintenance is also made easier with this product because there are self-healing elements. With Unqork and other web applications, it's going to be different how the elements are located on the screen. This tool makes it easier for you to do that. It helps to recommend the best and most stable locator, and it picks that one first. So you can go in and customize if you need to. However, it's on your side, and it's going to pick what's easiest to find.
So just one thing, I know you're going to show us a lot about AIQ. I already forgot how to pronounce the first part of it, autonomic, right? I know you're going to talk a lot about AIQ. They're a partner of ours. I know you've had tremendous success with them developing, but it doesn't have to be AIQ, right? We can integrate with a lot of different things, and certainly different folks are going to have different vendors, right?
Definitely. We found compatibility with dozens of tools. We found that this one was the best for us. So you can absolutely integrate with an existing system or, a tool that you find works best for you. What's important for you to consider is that we do have the model-based testing coverage and that it's compatible with the element locators. And other than that, whatever works best for your process is exactly what you should use.
Okay. Very helpful.
The team size, we're talking a lot about the team, the other elements of the team, project managers, architects, and, our creators. The testing team itself can get quite large depending on how many types of testing you need to cover and the tight timelines that we're often given. So in the past, that's exactly what we saw. In order to accommodate the short timelines and the expectation of putting a full coverage automation suite in place before go live, we had a team working around the clock in all different time zones with a manually intensive process. And now with our Codeless solution, we find that we are enabling people to put more and better services in place with less time. We're not working weekends. We're not constantly onboarding new people to keep the system going as new features are added. We're able to adapt and expand within our existing team size and tool set because of those self-healing functions. And also because at this time, a majority of our cases are actually recorded by the record and play function and then edited later by a QA lead and analyst. This allows, those happy path positive test cases to be covered by an individual who might only know how to manually test, manually validate items. And then somebody with an engineering and automation background can come in and, with global data variables and with a scheduled pipeline, put together a sophisticated test automation suite.
Those numbers are huge, and I think it's brilliant. It's so important to see. It's great for me to see how the kind of time savings you get, because one of the things that folks always talk about, at least that I hear with low code no code, is speed, right? You can build fast, you can build fast, you can build faster, but it doesn't mean you necessarily test faster just because you could build faster. So I mean, this is really in order to keep up, for QA to keep up with development in that sense, at least in terms of like the speed that these non-code based providers give you. You really kind of need this to keep with the expectations, like you said, you're getting these short timelines and all that.
Exactly. And, these are, our firsthand account of how we used to do things with, coded, manually intensive automation suites, and how we found that we needed to move and scale. As another example, a test case with about 75 steps, that's a pretty complex test case, would take an individual 15 minutes to update if that feature received edits throughout. So we have seen quite a lot of time savings. And as you mentioned, with Unqork codeless architecture, and we're encouraging these changes, and the testing strategy has to match.
Right. So you have in here, the number of people that are involved, and I know there's always been these things about ratios of engineers to quality analysts. How did those ratios work, both from a headcount perspective? So these numbers, not just on their own, but maybe reflective on if you had 18,000 developers, but 2 people, that might not be enough. But like, what's the ratio that you see, the best ratio that you see in a codeless world for number of quality analysts per engineer, so to speak, as well as like time allotted for development versus testing?
My answer is not that easy, actually. I can't get to a ratio, but I can get to a number.
Okay.
It's a calculation of the complexity of that application and what additional non-functional expectations might be there. We talked about performance, accessibility, and maybe some styles requirements that can trigger the need for a lot of testing, whereas it could have been very simple to implement on the back end. So it's a calculation of the data complexity and the non-functional requirements that allows us to understand how many people will you need to cover the risk.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense.
The interface itself, Autonomic, much like us, is a web application. So you can log into Chrome, have a Chrome extension, and be on your way. It's really easy to onboard to. We've seen that the amount of time for onboarding, I don't have an exact calculation for you there, but we give much less time for onboarding to this tool. It's easier to self-start and get going, as I mentioned, for that manual tester. And as you want to build on your knowledge, you can pick up what's needed for your application and use Sauce Labs, self-learning paths, and Unqork actually is beginning to add some to our academy as well. And I'd love to get right into the demo from the perspective of a tester who has been assigned, a new project, and they're going to come into the autonomic interface here. And it's easy to, delegate user administration, but for this purpose, they're going to create a new project. From the beginning, you can choose one of those 3 entry options. Are you going to upload from, manual XLS test cases? Are you going to record and play? Or this time we want to highlight actually working within Autonomic's interface. You'll see here that from the base URL, it is going to start pulling information already and allowing you to write your tests. In plain English, you can let it know, I want to enter my email address, I want to enter my password, and what are the data variables that go along with that. You'll see here that we're typing them directly in a more complex test case, or simply once it gets passed on to the QA lead, it would be switched out for a global variable so that you don't have to spend much time editing these types of things. But the plain English allows for you to understand, what is this test actually, pushing the parameters of? Is it a positive test case? Is it a negative test case? And as you show your project manager or your client what the coverage is, you can all be on the same page. You'll see here that once you save the tests, it's going to automatically generate them and run them. We're just going to run them locally here. However, you can actually choose which browser through Sauce Labs and which system you would want to test these on. You can also test them in parallel. As each step validates, it generates a screenshot. Very helpful for debugging, understanding exactly what the system generated for you here. And in the last test case, you'll see that we intentionally caused a failure for you so that you can go in, see what happened on the screen, and make very quick edits. Quick generation of tests is great, but if you can't maintain those systems, then you're not actually saving time. So along with the ease of creation of tests with Autonomic, you can very easily edit these tests as well. And you can see it's just as easy to rerun this test and get the new results going. The results are transparent, they're easy to understand, and ultimately, this method has improved our functional automation UI test coverage greatly. We start, of course, with happy path tests, but we increase in complexity from there. The happy path tests will always be there to be that early validation. Is my application working at a baseline? Did my promotion happen correctly? And they'll be your early indicators of project health. So they'll always be there for you. I mentioned that we were able to reduce the amount of tools that we had. So with Autonomic, you just saw how we created a test and we ran a test. Now, this is actually the view where you can create test suites and you can schedule them on a cadence. We highly recommend that you get a before and after snapshot so that you don't just have, a singular view of your application. You can have, monitoring over time throughout your sprints. And we recommend that you coordinate your test suites into Happy Path, something having to do with your data workflow and your user personas, and you prioritize those according to your business value. So we have found a lot of benefits from moving outside of what we used to use to manage our pipeline into this new system. The fact that it's on the cloud and that it's web-based means I can also have anyone jump in to monitor and run these tests, and there are no interruptions in the testing team. And this last bit is this high-level dashboard view. We love this view because it is not easy to get this pretty, interface when you're using a legacy coded system. It takes a lot of time to create an interface like this, actually. So the fact that it just appears for us is amazing. You can see here that you can get into an individual test case and see at a glance all the information that you would need to log a bug or to actually determine that the automation just has to be updated. This interface allows for quick debugging, quick communication of results, and all the transparency that's needed for teams to keep their sprint moving. If there's a single point in failure, you can jump in there and actually edit the test and run it at the same time. Everything will update in real time for you and anyone looking at the system. So we showed you 3 quick demos there. One was I actually don't know. Back out to the screen for you here. We showed you 3 demos there. One was, a user creating a test very simply in Autonomic's interface, writing in plain English, and running that test. We saw how they're able to edit it very easily, and how in the higher level view, what that looks like on a test suite and on a project level. We believe that this allows everybody in the project to work seamlessly together, from the tester themselves to the project manager and the client, individuals with that, business requirements knowledge, and the folks creating the application. We have reduced our, effort in automation by half, and we're really excited to see the number of test runs and test cases increase, knowing that we have people who are elevating their function. They're no longer, clicking through screens and checking boxes. They're trying to break the application, and they're trying to put together, complex automation test suites. And that's Autonomic. We've had a great time implementing this on our projects so far, And we use it on all of our delivery services projects going forward.
Cool. So I see it, you have down there enhanced continuous testing. You talk a lot about automation. You talked about the continual testing earlier and a little bit of CI/CD. Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about both when during like a build of a codeless application in Unqork you're running these, and maybe some ways that you've tied it in an almost automated way to connect to the activity inside of Unqork?
Yes. For each client, that's going to be different. One way that we've done this is actually with the release management dashboard from the UDLC toolkit. We had a team that wanted these tests to automatically kick off when they promoted from their build environment to their test environment. And we said, that's a great idea. Here are the APIs to do that. So there's integrations available from Unqork and from Autonomic Sauce Labs that make this possible. You just need to determine for you what's a pass and what's a fail. Depending on what gateway you put that testing suite on, you might have a different pass rate that you're okay with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you said release management. I wish, because I did a session a couple of weeks ago about how to integrate Unqork's release management with other SDLC processes you have. I realized I screwed up the order of operations there and should have had this first and then made that one even better by tying in this functional testing as well.
Well,
my mind is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
That's also just the way we've seen it thus far. Yeah. I think we will also see people integrating this into their existing systems. I showed you that Autonomic has their own pipeline. However, many companies are going to want to integrate this into their pipeline, which you can. Mm-hmm. So I think we're going to see this happen in so many ways that as long as we know that the content with which we are providing is standardized, then it can really go any direction.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, my mind watching the demo, my mind is spinning right now in terms of other ways to kind of leverage that, the codeless with the codeless development with the codeless testing. So, I'll just tell you tell folks one, like I saw you entered a URL, right? Mm-hmm. When you created your test, the URL has that identifier. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it could be possible that you could even, so there's that one of the release management integrations we showed is every time you save a module, you can run an event based on that. So you can subscribe to the publishing of a module save event. I guess you could then use that to go find every test that's associated with that given module that you've edited, and either not necessarily you can obviously run them, but also look for changes, right? Like, could I take the JSON of Unqork and say, oh, these are my 5 text fields. These are the 5 enter email address things I have. Oh, shoot. I changed email. I took the dash out of email because I could see in the diff between my module versions. So that would be like a flag to somebody to say, hey, you're going to have to go update the test that says e-mail to say email. Is that am I crazy, or is this the kind of stuff we could think about?
That's exactly the kind of stuff we can think about. And I'll pause on this screen here, but in that data field, we're entering very simple variables, but we can use the global data variable section within Autonomic, and that can be shared across projects as well. So we can have, reusable testing components that have the complex parameters that you're talking about, giving testers, creators, QA leads, whoever's creating the test, giving them that step up so that they're starting from, a much more stable point.
Right. So you're saying I would put email address as a global variable. So then if I change it everywhere. Is that where you were going with that?
Exactly. Or as many places as you want. Yeah.
Got it. And then, which is a good thing, because the first time that you said global variables on this stream, I thought you meant for a second Unqork's global variables, but you meant Sauce Labs global variables. So one, super cool to see that in a codeless world, a no-code world, whether it's no-code testing or no-code development, concept of global variables makes a lot of sense. And for folks that don't know, that is a feature of Unqork too. Like, you may be using the same formula, the same text, the same key, the same label all over the place. and you don't want to have to necessarily go and change it everywhere, take a look in your administration screens of Unqork to see how you could use global variables just like Karen and her team are using on their tests. So then I'm thinking, all right, well, I can tie my Unqork global variables to my Sauce Labs global variables. And if I change one of those, and I have to change the global variable, I mean, gosh, I want to go nuts with this now. Yeah. So I don't know. What are you most excited for? Like you've obviously done so much with this already. Like, is there anything on the horizon in ways that you're looking to continue to integrate this or continue to automate and enhance what you're doing that is just really excites you?
Yeah. Should I stop screen share? I don't have.
If that's the end of the sharing,
Yeah.
yeah, we can always pull it back up if we end up having to share something else.
Really most excited to see about where does this integrate next. We have enabled now everyone to automate. We have it across all of our projects, and I'm very excited to see the reusable components library that we're going to build, to see all of the best practices that we learn and what can be shared across those projects,
Mm-hmm.
and what other types of testing can we integrate with. We have to rewrite the book when we're talking about software development a little bit, because there are more possibilities, and there are sometimes different challenges or new challenges. So when we're talking about accessibility testing, for example, only 30% of accessibility testing can be automated at this time, and I want to challenge that. I think that if we're going to put out software that's accessible to everybody, then we need to make it easier and faster to test for that parameter. So I'm excited to see, now that we have the repetitive, functional testing covered and integrated into our process, where else can we have improvements? Where else can we have a shift left in testing and have those standards and those reusable components in place sooner rather than later,
Mm-hmm.
and make it easier for the creator to put out the content that they want to continuously.
So I know that I know you've been remote for quite a while, right? Even pre-pandemic, you were remote, but I do recall going back to my little nostalgic story about the first time we met on that one client project. We continued to work very closely on it, and there were nights where we were sitting side by side, and I would build it and you'd test it, and again, that's I've seen that throughout my career as I've always been very close to my QA team. Do you think that as we've gone to more of a remote first world, a lot of what you're talking about with that automation and bringing people together has become even more critical before? I mean, you've got a great perspective having been remote for so long.
Yes, it does. This allows us to speak more of the same language, I might say. Before, when we were coming to ask for test coverage reviews, and we were saying, look at all of our code, they're like, I haven't looked at code in years, what am I looking at? So we speak the same language now, which makes those interactions so much easier, considering that they are virtual now 100% of the time. And so it eases communication. It also allows the creators to help communicate their own new features better, because they will be part of the test case creation. And so we speak a little bit of their language, they speak a little bit of our language, and then all of the risks and the gaps get covered that way. Nothing falls through the cracks when all of the team is talking in that way. So I have seen improvements because we are removing those barriers.
Cool. And one other question, and then I'm just going to turn to you for some parting words. Is we talk about one of the things, the benefits of Codeless, and we've talked about it from a security perspective, right? So, hey, there's a security vulnerability that client A finds out, maybe. This is extremely rare, folks. I'm not saying this is a common occurrence, but of course, software hackers are always finding new and exciting ways to mess up your lives, or so we always got to keep up with that, right? So but if one customer finds a given problem in a codeless world and we fix it, everybody gets that security fix, right? So it's like security by, it's like group theory. I'm trying to think the term where you kind of not
It's like
herd
safety in
mentality. It always is
numbers.
like,
Yeah.
sorry?
Safety in numbers. Uh,
Yeah, right. So you have safety in numbers. So does that same concept kind of work here with testing, like almost like testing in numbers, and what you do is kind of transferable because of Codeless?
It does. We're all working on that same version of the software. So if, there's a vulnerability patch or if there's a new feature update, everyone's going to receive that at the same time. And if something is found in one place, you know, just for this isn't, happening. Well, let's say, for example, there was, performance was slow on all pages that were green. So if we reported that back to the company, they would be able to push out a fix that is applied to everybody, regardless of whether their screens were green or not. They would have that improvement pushed to their software.
Cool. All right. Well, as I said, that was my last question to you, putting you on the spot. So I just want to thank you again for taking your time. I mean, again, your work here at Unqork has been tremendous, and both for the company and for our customers and for all the creators that are out there who you help make sure that their jobs are going well. But anything you want to just add before we sign off today?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to have presented, where did we land on our codeless testing strategy after all of my time here, all the experience delivering these projects. What have we determined to be the best pairing, and what do you need to consider? So I was happy to present that. There's definitely more to come, right? There's always more complexities, new use cases that we would love to show you as we build on this system. And my favorite part is that we're including everyone in it. We're able to break down barriers, include people from other industries, and put our minds together to create the best possible codeless testing strategy. So I'm really happy to be here leading that. Thank you.
Awesome. And I'm happy to be a part of it. As we were talking before this, and as I said during this, my mind is spinning in other ways that we could, or more ways, not other, your ways are great, more ways that we can leverage what you're doing and tie it all together and really continue to paint this picture. So I'm excited. Looks like you're excited. I hope everybody else is excited. Thank you again for joining, and we'll see you next time on Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern again. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Karen.